This is the Run Pod Option. I'm Marty.
I'm Kyle.
I'm Jeff.
And I'm Josh. Wait, no, I'm Corwin. I'm the other one.
Hey, it's Corwin. Welcome back, Corwin.
What's up? Glad to be back.
If you're interested in listening to old football takes, in week 4, Corwin stood in for Jeff, who I believe was either out of town or sick.
He was scouting UNLV.
Oh, that's right. He was scouting UNLV. I forgot.
As like an actual scout?
No. No, he was there for like a business conference. But we told the public that he was in an in-bed with UNLV, and it hasn't worked well for UNLV.
No. I might have torpedoed them.
If you're new to the show, welcome. Take a second to subscribe. Follow us at RunPodOption on Twitter. Email us runpodoption@gmail.com. We appreciate everything. We appreciate you guys. And Corwin, do you want to do kind of a 60 seconds on who you are, where you come from, and drop that podcast information?
Yeah, so if you didn't listen to the previous episode I was on, go re-download it for these guys. Listen to it again so I don't have to give this spiel again. But I'm Corwin. I'm the co-host of the Juicing the Numbers podcast. We talk a lot of baseball, we talk a lot of football, and we talk about a hell of a lot of stats. It's a great time. Josh and I hate each other, so there's a lot of shit talking. If you want to listen to people who like each other, listen to this. If you want to hear two guys just really tear down the other person, just physically and emotionally, listen to Juicing the Numbers. You can follow us at Juicing Pod or at Juicing the Numbers anywhere you listen to podcasts.
Well, it's kind of funny because there is a parallel with Josh as a Jets fan. And we know how hard it's been for him. And Kyle's a Syracuse fan. And
can I call him up so that you could tell that again?
It's about him being a Jets fan and just how unfortunate it is.
I could run him into the ground about the Jags last weekend because...
Yeah, just whip each other's ass. Let's go ahead and get on to college football. So
I almost bought a Jags jersey yesterday. I don't know why that has anything to do with anything.
As like as an entry rug?
No, I really like Paul Posluszny, man, and I miss him, and I just want to have one of his jerseys.
Forgot about Paul Posluszny.
Actually,
man.
Do we have time for a quick story?
Yes. Let's go ahead.
So Paul Posluszny went to Penn State, two-time Bednarik Award winner, Butkus Award winner, two-time Consensus All-American, absolute stud at Penn State. The first time I met him as a child, I cried in front of him. It's the biggest moment of shame in my life. But like 2 years ago, I was like, man, he just retired. I want to get his jersey. I don't want to get a Bills jersey because who the fuck wants one of those? So I went and got a Jags jersey. Exactly. Ordered it off eBay. It was a great price. It. I put it on. It wasn't a fake. It was perfectly real. The problem was it was a woman's jersey. It was just a little too tight.
You had a belly shirt.
It was something. I still have it, so maybe I'll send you guys a picture of me wearing it, and you could have it be the new logo for your podcast.
Yeah, we'll put it as a cover art. It's a Paula Posluszny.
God damn it.
Well, enough about poor man Sean. Enough about poor man Sean Lee.
Damn it! I was going to ask Paul Posluszny or Sean Lee.
Paul Posluszny, for sure.
Because he's got a really blue collar last name. I think that's what's so attractive about it.
And have you seen how thick his neck is? If you Google Paul Posluszny neck, the neck's wider than his head is.
To wrap this back in, thicker neck, Paul Posluszny or Ed O?
Paul Posluszny definitely had a thicker neck, and I'm going to go with him. No, not as fun of an accent, but
No, not nearly.
I don't think I've ever heard him talk.
Posluszny?
He's a mute.
It's nothing extraordinary. It's not going to shock you with what his voice sounds like. He's just a normal dude.
Silent rage.
So for anybody that's a regular listener, you'll notice there's going to be kind of a Big Ten overload. We're at max capacity here with Corwin repping Penn State. He's actually a student there. Jeff, obviously, with Michigan.
Wait, really?
Which one of y'all? Oh, yeah. Yeah. All right, I'm headed out.
You guys should have had me on for the whiteout game. What? Come on.
Which one of y'all are more worried about their coach going and replacing Willie Taggert at Florida State?
I'm not worried.
Oh, it sounds convincing.
I have a coach that actually wins big games, so why would he leave?
Oh, there it is. Shots fired. Counterpoint, Jeff.
Well, I think Franklin has pretty much achieved all he's going to get. He's backdoored his way into a Big Ten title and won enough games. So, I mean, no, honestly, but genuinely, what else does he have to do? They're going to get close to the playoff this year and get blown out in a playoff game. So we'll
see.
Okay, so let's
you guys are going to get blown out by Florida in a bowl game again.
Y'all are more aggravated than a Florida State booster. Let's take this down a notch. We're just going to have, I guess, a around the horn style show today, which is cool. It's fine by me. So I'm going to ask a two-sided question about the Willie Taggert thing. One, I'm going to ask each one of you if you think he deserved to get fired this early, and then I'm going to ask you who your dream candidate to take that job would be.
Perfect.
In a good way. Not like I want it to be a shit coach because I want it to be Mark Stoops so they suck. Like, not that take, but like genuinely who think could be a really good fit for Florida State. So, Kyle, I'll start with you. Do you think Mark he was...
Mark Stoops is whatever.
No, we don't like Mark Stoops. It was just, I know that's rumored, and it's very underwhelming.
He's a dude. So, Willie Taggert. No, I don't think he should have been fired yet. He's not the one that... This is his second season. He's not the one that put together the entire team. And as I said in our preview episode, they weren't great with Jimbo the year before Willie Taggert got in there. I think they were like 3-5 in the conference. They were already on a downtrend. They need to build themselves back up. Giving a guy a year and a half is absolutely ludicrous, but whatever. I guess if you're going to be Florida State and you're going to be like that, then maybe you do deserve Mark Stoops.
So who do you think is a good replacement for him?
Has anybody called up Urban Meyer yet?
Nah, there's no chance.
There's no way he would ever agree to that.
The scenes, though, of him going there and Florida just imploding.
Florida fans would actually just go jump off a bridge. And it would be hilarious.
And Miami fans would be throwing all the money to also try to get him. Like in 3 years.
It would kill so many birds with one stone. It'd be hilarious.
So Urban Meyer's going to be your answer?
Him, or just go find Charlie Ward and see what happens.
Okay, I'll take my turn here. I think he was fired too early. I do agree with that. But I think it's his fault only in the way that he did everything the opposite of what Scott Frost did. So Scott Frost came in and said, like, listen, it's going to get worse before it gets better. And Taggert came in and goes, listen, I think it was like a quote. He said, I thought it was going to be a bunch of turds, but these guys are actually pretty good. And so saying that, you get questioned two ways. One, can you actually evaluate talent because, hey, they ain't good? And then the other side is, or are you just going to tell us what you think we want to hear, you know?
To be fair, he was judging it off of like a flag football scrimmage. He didn't actually get to see his offensive line block.
Yeah, it was a downloaded roster for NCAA 14 that he saw like a super sim of, and he's like, man, 300 yards. That's pretty impressive.
Look at this guy. He's an 87. He can't be bad. What a left guard.
I think my dream replacement for the coach just kind of, I think it's also a really entertaining one to think about, but I really would like to see Bob Stoops there and kind of, unfortunately, be the death strike to the XFL this early on. But I think Bob Stoops could do great things there because I don't think it's that hard if you're that good of a coach, you know?
Maybe Vince McMahon would challenge the entire set of boosters from Florida State to a Hell in a Cell.
He would just buy Tallahassee. Corwin, what's your take?
I don't think it's too early. I think he's kind of shown what he's been able to do at Florida State, and it's not much. I agree with what Kirk Herbstreit was saying he's basically just destroyed the culture at Florida State. These guys are undisciplined. They were starting fights with Miami fans before the game. They're not playing a clean football. They're not playing clean football. Willie Taggert saw a comment on Twitter basically saying that they didn't have an offensive playbook and that they were just using Kendall Briles to just wing it for every game. And he was like, yeah, no, we don't have an offensive playbook. And that's just infuriating when it comes to, bringing in new coach coming in from Oregon. And bringing pride back to just a really fantastic football program after Jimbo just decided he wasn't going to coach there anymore and just wanted out. Or
if Jimbo saw the writing on the wall.
Yeah, you could argue it both ways, but that last year he knew he wasn't going to come back, didn't really recruit all that much, and it kind of put Taggert in a hole before he even started. But, I mean, he hasn't really shown he's been able to recruit. The year before he came in, 2016, the recruiting class was third in the country. They were a consensus top 5 recruiting team every single year leading up to that with Jimbo. As soon as he comes in, with a couple guys left over from Jimbo, they dropped down to 6th in 2017. 2018, they dropped down to 11th. And 2 years into it, after bringing in Taggert, they're already down to 19 in the country. So recruiting is not looking good, especially when you are the premier college historically in the state of Florida. If you can't recruit Florida anymore, what are you doing? It's the biggest thing that Florida State has had to really keep themselves up. And I haven't seen anything that Taggart's done that really shows me that he's the guy for Florida State. So,
okay. And what coach?
I want Lane Kiffin, man. He's over there at FAU. He's a good coach. I like him. I think he'd bring the right attitude to Florida State.
And I think he's also kind of shown the fact that he's been at Florida Atlantic now for almost 3 full seasons, because I think I would have taken the under. I think most people would have, just based off track record, that he'd be in it for the long haul, I think, which is what interests me about that.
I mean, he's 21-13 at FAU right now. That's pretty impressive in and of itself, because FAU has not ever had a football program. So I'm all on board with bringing him into interview and see what he can do at Florida State.
And if there's one guy you got to trust at his word about being there for the long haul, it's definitely Lane Kiffin.
Jeff, what's your take here?
So I think Corwin brought up some really good points about why Taggert probably shouldn't have been hired to begin with. I mean, wasn't he hired with a losing record? Wasn't that something that came out before they even hired him at Florida State? His career?
Yeah, but but you have to factor that we did have a start at Western Kentucky there.
Yeah.
And I think he turned it around his, I think, 3rd and 4th year. I can't remember off the top of my head, but USF, he also had, I think, good, bad, and then finished with a really good season.
So I have it up in front of me if you want to know the specifics.
Yeah.
So he coached at South Florida. I'm not going to consider Western Kentucky because that's whatever. He coached 4 years at South Florida. His first year they went 2-10, then 4-8, 8-5, and then 10-2, winning their conference title that year. Had one season at Oregon where they went 7-5, and then at Florida State he's gone 5-7 and now 4-5.
That's kind of a different problem, but since he's been there, I do think they probably fired him too early. And the main issue you see, you guys touched on them not being disciplined. They get a ton of penalties. They don't play smart. But they're still just covering up the problem with the offensive line. It doesn't matter who's going to be there. They're going to have to try to recruit out of that. And you now basically have a dead class, because are they going to hire someone? I know the AD said he wants to hire someone before the end of the season, but are they going to be able to turn around and really get a great class? So it's going to take another 2 to 3 years to get that offensive line rebuilt, it's going to be a struggle.
2 of 3 years having a dead class, because after Jimbo left, the same thing happened. I think their December recruiting class was awful. Like, they didn't end up doing anything that year compared to what Jimbo was up to before, like Corwin alluded to.
Right. Is it fair to say that much the way that Tennessee has gone, that this might be what Florida State is?
Could be. Let's have Jeff finish his thought and pick a coach, and then we can kind of dive into that if you want to, and just kind of the fandom.
I was going to go with Bob Stoops, too. I don't think he's going to come back to the grind of recruiting, though. So I'm going to make a kind of funny pick. I think PJ Fleck would be hilarious at Florida State. Because, 1, he would put the rowboat on their helmets, and 2, it just would be great to see him stalking the sideline. And I don't know if you guys have watched Minnesota play, but he is a terrible game manager. He is he burns 2 or 3 timeouts like in the first quarter, so it would just be great to see him there.
That's definitely going to be a topic of discussion when we talk about the Penn State Minnesota lines.
For sure. Yeah, definitely. We'll talk about it. Okay, so what Kyle was kind of segueing right into is Florida State. Is there a parallel between what Tennessee is now as a program to what Florida State has been as a program the last 4 years?
I kind of think there is, because, I mean, even under old Butchie Boy out in Tennessee, I mean, they recruited well. They just could put the product out there. And I know that Florida State's recruiting class has gone down and down. There's still, as you said, 19 in the country. You should be able to put out a competitive team with the 19th best recruiting class and the 11th best recruiting class. That should be a competitive team. It's possible that this is what they're looking at, unless they get a guy in there that can manage this. But as you said, that's 2 to 3 more dead classes and trying to figure out your identity at that point. Now, I don't know if the boosters or the fandom in Florida State will give it that chance to kind of actually become something, because they're very much win now. But I don't know. I could definitely see them going the way of Tennessee.
I think it might be Tennessee's problem is trying to keep up with Alabama, and Florida State's problem is going to be trying to keep up with Clemson. And right now, I don't think that's realistic for either program, at least not for a few years. I think we can all agree on that. And it's kind of the way football's gone now, right? Like, powers shift. And as we saw with, I think I mentioned it maybe last episode, it only takes 4 or 5 years for you to be a blue blood, but to be almost helpless. And Michigan was almost in that situation before Harbaugh came in. And Florida State's experiencing it now. The difference being Florida State went 40 years without having to hire a coach. It was Bowden, and then Jimbo was the coach in waiting, so there was no hire necessary. And now Taggert was really their first reach, right? And they made a mistake, so they're 1 for 2.
Well, I mean, then you kind of look at Tennessee in that vein. They didn't start to fall apart until they got rid of Fulmer. And then you look at Virginia Tech, it's kind of in the same boat right there. They had Beamer for forever. Now look at him. It's kind of nice when you have one of those coaches that you can kind of go with for a while. Now, I know Fulmer wasn't the best coach in the world. He did win a national championship with T. Martin.
Jeff, Corwin, any final thoughts before we move on from there?
Is this the year that we're going to see Brent Venables finally move on from Clemson? Like, if they somehow miss out on the playoff, or if they really just can't show that they're one of the top teams this year, or if they get blown out in the playoff, whatever it may be, is this the year that he finally looks out and starts interviewing with head coaching vacancies?
I don't know, but Manny Diaz versus Brent Venables every year might be a lot of fun.
I would be all for that.
Really surprised no one said Mike Leach, just for fun.
I think Mike Leach is happy with staying out of the spotlight up in Washington. I think
the Pullman lifestyle is probably fitting him pretty well.
Yeah,
like, he's teaching classes now about fucking warfare. He's got it made.
Craig James is nowhere near him.
Yeah, nobody's trying to fight for his job or try to get him fired for some bullshit.
Yeah, no one's pretending to be locked into an electrical closet.
Coach Bro is in the NFL.
It's a win-win. So 2 games, just kind of briefly, that I'll go over here, and then we can kind of talk about the context of it. Utah beat Washington at Washington, and Oregon went down to USC and absolutely just manhandled them. Quite literally, it was a very chippy game. Do we think that Utah or Oregon, if they win out from here, and whoever wins the conference championship, that there's a clear path into the playoff for them? And which team would you favor to win out to actually make the playoffs?
I don't think that there's a clear path for them. I think they are going to be stuck with waiting for one of the top teams to lose, outside of, LSU, Alabama. It's going to be tough. I mean, I personally think Oregon has the upper hand. I think they're a more complete team all around and just have more X factor players to really push them through and win out over Utah. But unless Oklahoma loses or unless Clemson loses, I think it's going to be a tough bet trying to get a Pac-12 team in the playoff this year.
I think Ohio State, if they went out, like they're obviously in. Mm-hmm. I think if Alabama and LSU only have the one loss to the other one and they win out, then I think both of them are making it. And then Clemson either has to completely drop the ball. It comes down to Clemson for me. Clemson has to lose.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the other side of that. Do you think that, let's say that Alabama or LSU, make it to the championship game, and Georgia wins that game? Ooh. They're going to keep out a Georgia team with one loss?
No, Georgia.
No, I think they'd give it to Georgia.
Yeah, Georgia goes in.
But then you'd get the other team would get in from the SEC as well, I think.
Yeah, so which team do you take? The one that had the most recent loss? That's an interesting question.
I would say whichever team, like let's say LSU or Alabama loses to Georgia, I think whatever team wasn't in the SEC championship would make it in. I think that would just be the perfect confusing chaos to make sense in the eyes of the committee.
Oh man, you guys got my head spinning. I was trying to
a lot of scenarios.
I mean, yeah,
you're sick. It's fine.
Yeah, I'm under medication. So Corwin, you were saying that the team that lost the SEC championship would still sneak in that scenario.
No, I think the other team.
Oh, okay.
So I think Georgia, if they win, would get in, and whatever team didn't just lose to Georgia would get in. Man,
I don't know. I really want to see something a little different this year, and I feel like we're kind of heading for similar results, minus, I mean, obviously Notre Dame was in it last year, and they have no business this year, but I don't see a Pac-12 team coming in.
It's kind of unfortunate because I do think if Oregon got another crack at a top team, because they're one Bo Nix pass from being undefeated, I think they could probably hold their own. Maybe not against Clemson and Ohio State, but I think maybe against an LSU or an Alabama. You know what? That's a dumb thing to say. I honestly don't know because they're all so good. Mm-hmm. Like, and the biggest kick for me is if Tua's a game, in air quotes, game time decision, he's definitely playing. And if Alabama loses, we know the playoff committee looks at injuries and would forgive that. So if LSU wins out and they'll look at Alabama and go like, their only loss was to the SEC championship and Tua was, not 100%. Now that we know he's healthy, let's go ahead and put Alabama in too. I think it works in that scenario, and I think it also works if Georgia beats LSU, them giving Alabama another shot over LSU, as Corwin was alluding to, because it's like, maybe Tua wasn't healthy. They only lost to LSU by, 4, whatever it is, and that might have been the difference.
I think that we're living in a world right now where we're going to get two SEC teams in, no matter what. And, okay. This is what's going to happen. If this game between Alabama and LSU is close, and that team that loses only has that one loss the rest of the year, the other team goes undefeated, goes to the SEC championship. These are the two scenarios. One, Georgia wins, and I think that the team that's in there with them goes to the playoffs. Two, the SEC West team wins, and then the other SEC West team follows them.
Yeah, I could see that scenario. It really is going to take LSU beating Alabama and then Alabama losing to Auburn, I think, for Oregon or Utah to have a chance at all. And that's a bummer because I'm okay with having two SEC teams, but in 4 out of 4 is just not enough for me, man. We can have a bigger offseason discussion, but 4 is just, especially this season, just doesn't feel like it's enough.
Oh, I'll yell for 8 all day long.
Yeah, 8 all day. Speaking of Georgia, they beat Florida. Georgia was 12 for 18 on third downs. And all I kept seeing on Twitter at the time was the blowback on Todd Grantham because he was just calling apparently an awful game. And you give up 12 third downs, you're calling a bad game defensively. Do we think that it was Georgia beating Florida, or because of something like that it was Florida taking themselves out of the game?
I think it's Georgia beating Florida. I know people just kind of wrote off Georgia after that loss, and to a degree, rightfully so. They looked very bad that game. But, man, you have to remember how talented and how deep this team really is. I mean, they've been a top 5 recruiting class the past few years. They have some superstars at so many positions. Georgia has absolutely stunned me this year with how well they have been able to play consistently. Even with 2 losses, I think they've played like one of the toughest teams in college football. And you know what? They played a Georgia team that just was honestly better all around. I mean, their offense just couldn't stop pumping. Their defense is stout. I think this is a lot more Georgia beating Florida than Florida beating itself.
Okay, I think I agree. I think the Kyle Trask effect finally caught up with Florida, honestly. And Trask has been great in place of Felipe Franks, who I'm not totally sure is that great anyways, but he did his best, and Florida couldn't run the ball.
That was one of the biggest things is for a lot of this year, Florida has made a living with big run plays, and they had nothing. Like, I was looking at the box score. They finished with 20 rushing yards on 19 attempts. Like, that's pretty wild. So, yeah, I mean, Georgia was lights out.
If we weren't totally sure Georgia had a dominant defense, I think this game proved that they do. And I'm still not totally sure that their offense is great, but their offensive line really held their own against a Florida defensive line that I think is regarded as a pretty great one. And if that offensive line gets cooking like people expected it to, like it didn't against South Carolina, then I don't like their chances against an Alabama or LSU necessarily, but I do think they at least aren't hammered by those teams.
I honestly think that Georgia can take out Alabama this year. There's no reason why they shouldn't be able to. I think that their defense can do enough. I'm not really that enamored with Tua, and I think that their offense can do enough to get them a win.
Any other thoughts before I move on?
Not really.
Okay, that's cool. All right, so I'm going to start just kind of doing some quick hits here and wrap us up kind of with the last 10 minutes of the show, okay? So feel free to stop, bring up whatever you want to bring up. Michigan beat the shit out of Maryland. The only note I have on this is Maryland's first 2 games, they scored 142 points, and since then they've scored 124. I thought that was pretty important, if only because I don't think I can ever remember a team doing that.
Well, they played that stout Syracuse defense in the second game, so...
And what happened?
Didn't the first 2 games were like the only games when they had like their top 2 quarterbacks?
Yeah, no, they are. Maryland is a cursed program, and there's an older post on SB Nation on their Maryland blog, and it was something. I think it was detailing the injuries they had from like 2015 to 2017. Off the top of my head, I'm trying to remember, but like every time. Basically, a quarterback played for Maryland, their ACL would just explode, or a key position player would get hurt. They've really had a tough go on there, and I don't know if maybe it's a strength and conditioning thing. maybe they just need the right strength and conditioning coach with like the right mustache to come in.
Well, it's not like they've had any major issues or scandals with their strength and conditioning in the past, year.
Ooh, that's a good point. Yeah,
more conditioning than anything.
That staff is all gone, so
yeah, I kind of forgot about that. UVA looked really good against UNC. Bryce Perkins is the untouchable man. He had 378 yards in the air, 3 touchdowns passing. He ran for another 112 and had 2 touchdowns. He is Kyler Murray light, and I'm excited for UVA when they get to a bowl game just to see what he's doing. I hope he stays healthy. 2 other quarterbacks that had really fun ones. TCU and Oklahoma State played. Chuba Hubbard was the difference, but Max Duggan and Spencer Sanders were both really fun, both running the ball a ton. Oklahoma State's kind of catching a rhythm, I think, maybe. Yeah. And I'm wondering if maybe Oklahoma should be concerned about that when it comes to Bedlam time.
They should be concerned about Mike Gundy's hair, too.
He's a man.
This is a podcast. This is a podcast that appreciates. He's well over 40 now. We appreciate that hair, if nothing else, because there's a couple of bad gimmicks in football, but that mullet ain't it.
That mullet is it. Thank you.
You think
much.
It's a bad thing?
Oh, I love the mullet.
Okay, that's what I'm saying. I think we got our wires mixed. Yeah, I was saying that there are bad things. That mullet is not.
Yeah, Marty, you have to remember, I'm incredibly stupid.
No. It's listen. You didn't choose to go to Penn State, so Wake Forest. Wake Forest is Wake Forest is on the roll. On the roll. Fuck me. Wake Forest is on the roll. All right, so Kyle was a Wake Forest hater. And he didn't.
No, I'm just still honoring Skip Prosser.
Okay. All right. So we didn't. God. Jesus. So we didn't. He didn't boast when Louisville beat Wake Forest, and he had a chance to, which I respect Kyle for doing that because he will boast when he gets a chance. Do we think that this Wake Forest team? Well, this is to do a raw number percentage chance that they can beat Clemson at Clemson later this year. Corwin.
15.
Jeff.
Yeah, I was going to say about 10%.
10. Kyle.
I'll hang at 10 around 10.
Oh, man. All right. So I think it's...
I did not think 15 would be
I want to believe that... Yeah, me either, Corwin. I really... I want to...
Don't have faith in it. It's Syracuse from last year.
Yeah, they didn't have Say Chirot. There we go.
No, we had better receivers.
Ooh, hot take.
That's debatable.
Jamal Custis would love to fight him.
So here's the only reason I have probably a 20% for Wake Forest, maybe 25%, is Wake Forest's strength on defense is against the run. And I think that this year's proven that Trevor Lawrence can be had, right? Louisville did for the whole first quarter, and there's plenty of other games where he hasn't looked very good. I think that if they can stop ATN, I think they have a chance. And the only thing that makes me kind of believe that a good rush defense, dude, I thought that. I really did. And then SMU held Gainwell to barely 100 yards. And I didn't think there was a chance in hell. And SMU isn't what Wake Forest is. Despite Wake I think is 39th best. Their 39th.
Yeah, but Gainwell isn't Etienne.
Ain't he?
Etienne's averaging 9 yards per rush this season.
That's what Gainwell was. I guess different competition. I think Wake Forest is a 25% chance. Let's move on. SMU lost to Memphis. I don't even want to talk about it, except for one thing.
R.I.P.
All right, I'll bring up one thing about it. So SMU lost. They lost by 6 points. It wasn't even that close, I don't think. It's just Shane Bichelle will not be stopped.
Man, I love him.
But the difference was the special teams. I'm going to read off every drive and the position that Memphis started. So Memphis started their drives at their own 48, 50, 30, SMU's 45, their own 44, 47, 41. Ooh, they finally started at their 2. That was after a fantastic Bichelle punt. They started at their 2 again after another Bichelle punt. And then they started at their 46, 22, 21, and then at SMU 48 to end the game. Quick math here. They started at their own 40, basically. You can't, against that offense, you can't do that. And SMU could not get off the field defensively. And it's a shame because I think that if SMU is completely healthy, at least we have overtime. Speaking of not getting off the field, Syracuse fired their defensive coordinator. Kyle, how many yards did they give up on the ground?
496.
Let's go ahead and
a school record.
Oh my God!
It's a school record, and it's a record for this season on yards, rushing yards given up in FBS versus FBS.
Not to mention that their walk-on quarterback went 8 for 10 with 195 yards and 3 touchdowns.
Sign him. That's who's going to get He's going to transfer to Florida State and pull them up by their shoelaces with the new coach.
I can't, man. The team is tapped out. Syracuse is tapped out.
Notre Dame almost lost to a third-string quarterback. Are we glad that Notre Dame... Once again, are we glad Notre Dame's out of the playoff conversation?
Yes.
Perpetually, yes.
Excellent. So, any final thoughts? We're going to wrap up this review show
Penn State won the bye week. That's all I got to say.
I don't understand that one bit. Syracuse won the bye week last week.
Actually, you do have a good point.
I got one question. We got 3 weeks left. Are any other coaches fired next week?
Honestly, the fact that
general, yeah, probably.
The fact that that Clayton, after USC got hammered, that Helton is not gone is beyond me.
Yeah.
I think we'll definitely see more firings. I couldn't tell you who the next one is.
Chad Morris.
Ooh, that's a good one.
That's a
Chad
good
Morris
one.
is it. I think Chad Morris might be it, especially if they lose to Western Kentucky this week.
They're dreadful.
What about Scott Frost?
No, Scott Frost is going to be safe. He's the messiah there.
No, Scott Frost started. Yeah, if it doesn't work with Scott Frost, I don't know where Nebraska goes, and I think they know that. But I also think that Scott Frost. Oh my God, go back to 9 wins a year, baby. I think
what they're going to do is they're going to fire Scott Frost and bring in Willie Taggert.
Can you imagine?
That would be something.
Now, I do have a hot take that I want to end with. It won't matter if Wake Forest beats Clemson because on my birthday, November 30th, Syracuse will beat Wake Forest.
Oh, are you calling the shot? Is it at Wake Forest?
It is not. It is at the Dome.
Yikes!
All right, Kyle.
Yeah, can I put a bet against that?
Yeah, can we short? Where do you short sell? Where's the button to short sell?
Is that a short joke? Is that because I'm short?
Yes.
No, actually, it wasn't, but now it is. So
I'll tell you.
5'5".
I'm 6'8". I couldn't even hear him.
You're 6'8"?
Yeah.
Fuck off. Are you for real?
Why is everybody in my life over 6'2"?
God, 6'8", Corwin. Why aren't you playing fucking receiver for Penn State?
I'm white.
Why aren't you playing tight end? Why aren't you playing tight end for Penn State?
That's a much better question. Because I weigh about 135 pounds.
Okay, cool. Very deadlift shrimp of you.
How do you fit in your bunk bed?
Why would I have a bunk bed?
Do you live on campus?
No, I have a house off campus.
That's what Kyle had at Tennessee. They had bunk beds still.
No, not at Tennessee. No.
No, I have a California Queen bed.
Oh.
Thank you very much.
Couldn't spring for the king.
Ooh.
It would not have fit.
Fancy
California Queen. That's going to be James Franklin's nickname when he goes to USC next year.
Dun, dun, dun.
Corwin, say bye.
Bye.
Kyle, say bye.
Bye.
Jeff?
Bye.
Say anything but bye. This is your bit, Jeff. You still can't get the bit.
I've run out. I've used everything I had.
Corwin, what language did you take in high school?
German and Latin.
How do you say goodbye in German?
Giant.
I didn't hear it because Kyle. We're just going to talk over each other.
If we're like being super casual, like we usually do, a nice tschüss.
Tschüss.
Auf Wiedersehen.
All right, Jeff, Auf Wiedersehen. Go ahead.
Auf Wiedersehen.
All right, guys. Thank you all for joining us on our review show. Remember, at RunPodOption on Twitter. We appreciate it. Corwin's going to stick around for the review show. I'm sorry, not the review show, the pick show, which we're going to be releasing on Wednesday. Enjoy Week 11, and you'll be hearing our picks soon.